Welcome everyone. So, this is the official announcement of the project. Um, this is the sorry about that. I'm just checking the live stream is working. Okay. Now, I'm very happy to announce the Galapagos Project, and in this project, I've been working for a couple of months, and it's really interesting. This is the first live stream and the official announcement of the project, so bear with me if there is like some problems or something is not working, but we will try to go through it. Okay, so it will be mainly kind of 4 main ingredients in this big announcement, and a 0 ingredient, which is like the history of the project. I think the history is quite interesting, so I will start kind of telling a little bit how I came up with this, and yeah, and so it will be a little bit of the history, the main ingredients of the project, and kind of the main tasks we're going to achieve or try to achieve in this project. So it will be the database construction, then this which I call the Gemini Expedition, and finally we will kind of try to ground all of these kind of explorations in some very concrete objectives and deliverables. So let's start with a little bit of the history. So the history also has kind of a lot of different pieces. So and they all kind of come together in this project. So the first one is the combinatorial theory of evolution and economics. The second one is the physics project that Wolfram recently launched, and that I've been kind of very closely associated with. Then it's the empirical theory of MetaMathematics, and finally the Game of Life Cellular automation. So there is like a lot of moving pieces, but don't worry about it. I will go through each of them in like one by one, sequentially. So let's start, and this is kind of the historical part. So it's kind of how I came up with the project, right? So all of the pieces kind of were kind of bouncing in my mind until kind of April 2021. So let's start with the first one, which is I think something quite interesting though, and I think it's very related with kind of it's kind of at the core of the project and also kind of at the boundary at the same time. So last year, in the summer of 2020, I started kind of reading and researching a little bit about economics, and with my friend Andres Gallegos, a economist at um, the Inter-American Development Bank. We discussed many things about the connections between information and economics, entropy and economics, physics and economics, biology and economics. And it was very fruitful kind of endeavor for me. And although we didn't really kind of produce anything kind of concrete, I think it was really kind of useful for me, very kind of creatively, to understand a lot of kind of economics concepts and kind of get an understanding of on how an economist think. I think mostly. So this was kind of in the summer of 2020. Then later that year, I I encountered kind of the work of Brian Arthur in his in a podcast in the Santa Fe Institute Complexity podcast, and he started to talk about a little bit of combinatorial theory of evolution, and how it relates to technology, how it relates to economics, and it was very interesting. It was very interesting. It was kind of something that I've never heard of, but as soon as I heard it, I thought, okay, it's obvious. I mean, the basic idea it's simply that like pieces of technology are assembled by is kind of sub pieces of technology. That's it. I'll go through that idea in more detail, but that's kind of the core idea. Um, of course, there is a whole book which I have here in my desk, which is The Nature of Technology, which kind of explains this much more, but I'll go through that. I'm talking now only about the history. But there was one comment that really made my kind of called my attention, and it was related with mathematics. And he said that basically mathematics worked the same way. And at that point, when I first heard it, I said, this cannot possibly be true. Mathematics is way more complicated. But this was kind of the first initial impression. I said, I mean, this is just kind of a Lego kind of model. I don't think it really works that way. But anyways, it just kind of I found very interesting, and I continue with my life. So the second idea, these are very apparently disparate ideas, but all of these kind of have a union, and is since my background is in physics, I've always been interested in kind of in in the fundamental physics and other areas in physics, and I did some fundamental physics kind of a long time ago. But I've always kind of I've always I always felt that kind of computation was kind of the missing piece in physics. So that was kind of my idea, and like in 2019, so kind of 2 years ago, I started kind of listening to a lot of and reading a lot of Stephen Wolfram's content in the in about many different things, not only physics but also cellular automation, many different things. But the main point was that I started reading the chapter 9 of his I Knew Kind of Science book, and I realized that many of these things were really not explored in the today's literature, and I started really wondering strongly why was that the case, and maybe you could say that I didn't know the literature good enough, but especially some things that I really did the literature good enough were really not explored, and some of these had to do with the relation with differential geometry and kind of emerging models of space-time, uh, and I've been and I kind of definitely I am definitely familiar with kind of a lot of these methods, with the kind of lattice gas methods, lattice Boltzmann methods, and I realized that okay, why is people not working on this direction? And I mean, uh, there are multiple answers to this, but I said that definitely was kind of an opportunity to pursue at the time. Um, and to my surprise, it turned out that just 1 year later, this project was going to um, was going to start. And basically, I mean, this is kind of a very big project. It's really its main kind of selling point perhaps is the kind of the unification of gravity with quantum mechanics, but really, um, really, it's really about much more. It's really about that the idea of computation, it's kind of the fundamental idea underlying reality, and that's basically the main point of this project. And of course, in the 2020, Stephen and his collaborators at the time, which were only 3 people, developed a bunch of ideas, kind of on in this kind of framework. Of course, they used hypergraphs and graphs and other kind of specific data structures, but that was kind of the idea. And this idea, I think, has been slowly gaining track in the mainstream community. It used to be like 20 years ago, that it was all about a kind of continuous method, geometrical method, geometrical methods, and in fact, kind of there was kind of a big geometric revolution in the 80s and 90s. But I personally believe that kind of the computational revolution really is starting to happen only now, and it's gotten today much more into the mainstream, but not due to kind of the importance of computation in itself, but rather more because of topics like quantum computation, quantum information, even today's artificial intelligence, which is kind of the more, let's say, the more popular idea today. So last spring, when the project was announced, I was really excited because it really kind of fit into my vision, of how I thought kind of physics ought to progress. And I started reading about it. I even produced a little bit of content about it. But at the time, when it was first announced, I didn't really pay get to work full into it. It was only later this winter where I attended the Wolfram Winter School, where I kind of started working on it and started kind of, let's say, slowly absorbing some of the ideas that were behind this. And even though, of course, I share this kind of overall framework, or this overall kind of mission of the project, I am currently not working on the let's say, on the fundamental aspects of physics. Really, I think personally that in order to contribute on this area, I mean, you have to be like borderline like a PhD in theoretical physics. But anyways, I'm really familiar with many of these topics, and I've studied them, a lot of them, in a lot of detail. But really, it was more kind of the big kind of models that they developed and the big kind of frameworks that really caught my attention, and is something that started kind of shaping the way I started to think about many other ideas that I had in my mind. And I believe today that kind of the methods developed in these kind of projects allows us to kind of propose theories about theories. So second order theories, so like meta theories, like theories about mathematics, theories about engineering, theories about economics, about biology, about many different areas. And really, I think for me, this is the most important aspect, and this is what I'm currently focusing on. and I think I'll be much more precise with what I meant with this, especially when I get into the more into the core of the project. So another really big aspect of this project, it comes from kind of inspired from the world of mathematics. So the world of mathematics is quite interesting. It is really kind of if you are a mathematician, is really diverse. There is like a lot of fields. There is foundation of mathematics, and I've always been interested in that area. And maybe it was because I had very good math professors, or because I had kind of some very famous faculty in my undergrad years. But I think due to kind of the philosophy I was raised with, I kind of missed some of the biases that were developed in the 20th century mathematics. So 20th century mathematics very much starting with Hilbert, and perhaps with kind of mixed a lot with kind of the Bourbaki group, was kind of very much kind of mathematics based on kind of axiomatic systems, and kind of very like no diagrams, like very analytic. I think it was only later where people with the advent of kind of category theory and other areas, that people started to realize a little bit more kind of the synthetic approach. So the synthetic, I was raised, I believe, more with the synthetic ideal, and the synthetic ideal is a lot about not a lot about the initial kind of underlying building blocks, but rather what is the process of building a very complicated mathematical object. The process matters, you know, and this process is kind of at the heart of a trade-off in mathematics, or dichotomy that is usually kind of set theory versus category theory, or rigor versus intuition, or geometric versus algebraic. This is kind of at the core of kind of the mathematical thought. However, I think the point on this is that like this synthetic approach of kind of the process of doing something is, I believe, is really important, and to some extent I believe is being like ignored because of many different things. I think perhaps people didn't have the framework on how to think about it, or the other one, which I believe is also true, is that people looked at the things and couldn't really figure out how to organize all the things that happened. I mean, for example, you can see here in the screen that we have like a bunch of graphs about with kind of related with kind of mathematical concepts. But how can you make sense of all of this? This is kind of a little bit also the problem, and recently there's been kind of a lot of work, kind of because like mathematics and mathematicians are doing kind of mathematics much more in a computerized way. So there's been a lot of work kind of analyze all these data coming from it in empirically. And when I started to look at these studies, I started to realize more and more that what Brian Arthur what he said was very much correct. It is, we really develop these concepts in this way, and I was like, whoa, this is incredible. I never thought we were really doing this. So at some point I realized, and I said, hold on, if mathematics can be analyzed in this framework, and we're using a lot of these tools in mathematics, why don't we use all of these tools in technology too? And this was kind of my main motivation. I mean, I have to admit that really my main motivation was not to think about really technology. My main motivation was to think about kind of money. Really, it was to think about kind of, if money is a technology, can we, if we understand technology, then well, we will understand money as a kind of externality of just understanding technology. So I embarked in this project, and I wrote a bunch of articles about kind of money and technology and money and mathematics, and the more I dig into this, I realized that there was a lot of things to explore. However, there was one piece missing, one piece that I just couldn't figure out. I just couldn't figure out what was the right kind of framework to study technology. Sorry, not the framework, the right example. Of course, in mathematics we have all these database of theorems, and so it is kind of simple, quote unquote, to kind of explore these databases. But what is the database in technology? I mean, I talk about kind of patents or their economic quantities. First of all, there's been work already on this, and second of all, I think it's rather kind of there is a lot of information lost. I mean, I talk about a bunch of things, and suddenly it hit me. It hit me kind of April 21st or 24th, I don't remember, 2021, and I realized that the best thing to study was incredibly the Game of Life Cellular automation. It's remarkable that this is the case, but it is, in my personal opinion, the fundamental example. And there, I'll talk briefly why in the next section, why this is the fundamental example. But it's very surprising this is the case, I think, and I think there is really, and I believe I'll give some kind of arguments here why I think nobody really has considered this, or very few people have considered this. And I think there are two main reasons, I believe. And I think the first main reason is that this is just a toy model, right? I mean, if we are attempting to understand a big piece of technology like an airplane or like a rocket or like a missile, or even something more complicated like a biotechnology or DNA or whatever, like these are kind of real world things, and this model, first of all, is a piece of software, and second of all, it's about a toy model, about a toy universe, about a toy universe who works with kind of very different rules. But there are, of course, you could say, okay, we can study about a lot about the Game of Life, but what's the point of it? So this was really, I think, why I really didn't talk about it at first. And I think to some extent, when I was studying in my undergrad, I really never paid much attention to it. A lot of people would like to kind of fool around with these model construct things, but I always thought, man, like this, like what is the, how this touch reality, and I think perhaps I mean I'll first off and the second point, I'll just give a little bit more kind of arguments to my first point later, but to the second point, really, is even though I saw the people creating these very interesting things, I mean, like it's like when you are in a fish inside the ocean, like I was kind of not able to see that perhaps there were other universes or other rules where people were not able to build these complicated things. So I kind of missed it, and I think a lot of people had missed it. And of course, the fact that this is a toy model, I think a lot of people, especially I think today, with the advent of machine learning and artificial intelligence, people are not interested in these toy models anymore. And I think the reason why people are not interested is because it's difficult this touches reality at any point. And you would say, oh, but there are very interesting things. This is computational universal, blah blah blah. However, I think this is really something that I've been kind of realizing more and more, and it is not about the underlying rules. It's about how we use them to construct something. And I think this is kind of a criticism. Even though I am a research affiliate of the Wolfram Physics Project, I am deeply critical of the principle of computational equivalence that Wolfram famously announced in 2002. I think this principle is almost vacuous. I don't know how to pronounce it. Is really kind of meaningless unless you explicitly construct. Okay, but what is the principle of computational equivalence? Okay, I have it here such that I can tell it to you explicitly. So basically, what it says is that there is almost all processes that are not obviously simple can be viewed as computations of equivalent sophistication. Okay, so what does this mean? It basically means that if you see a computation in nature, like a waterfall, or like a river, or like a tornado, or even like living things, if they are complicated, or the economy, whatever, and they're not obviously simple, you can think that all of them basically are the same level of computational sophistication, which is kind of equivalent to a Turing machine. So this is what it says basically. But I think, although this is, I think, quite interesting, is basically saying two things: that computation is at the nature of, or at the core of reality. I think much more that it's saying that there is kind of a how can I say, a bound on how much computation power, how much computational power you can have. So you cannot have hypercomputers. You can only achieve the max of computational universality of a Turing machine, and is not less either. So it's kind of a jump of kind of simple kind of very simple and let's say predictable rules to kind of something unpredictable and computationally universal. But I mean, this is really I think there's been a lot of debate. People have been kind of confused about this for many years, and I think the reason people have been confused about this is because it is really meaningless unless you explicitly construct the equivalence. And I mean, this is tough because there are many things for which constructing the equivalence is very difficult. For example, we are close to constructing an equivalence with fluid dynamics, but it's really not yet there. So it is like very difficult to construct this equivalence, but I think it's fundamental to construct this equivalence because it the construction is what matters at the end of the day. And we come back to Conway Game of Life. All these constructions that we are able to construct is the fundamental thing. So this is kind of the main, I think, lesson of 28th century mathematics, and it is that it is not really the axioms that matter, but what can we construct with them, really. It is really like not, and it's kind of a synthetic measures analytic approach. It's really not that all mathematics can be reduced to these four things, but rather, okay, given these four things, what can we do with it? And there are a lot of people who have talked about this. I think Grothendieck was very famous on it, and I think if I may say something that actually motivated me specifically was a kind of a podcast from David Krakauer, the director of the Santa Fe Institute, and he said the following thing, which I think is just the right thing for perhaps taken it like kind of as my guiding light, and is this quote that I will tell you here. So the history of science is the history of reduction. To understand is to take something apart and look at its constituents. So when we were kids, someone gave us a radio or a car and we take it apart. And there's some insight to be had by looking at what makes something up. But the harder problem is to put it together again, right? And that's emergence, right? That's the other side. That's the construction side of science. The history of science is the science of reduction. The future is emergence. So, of course, there are many things related to this, but I think the fundamental piece is construction. This is the key word here. And I mean, there are many ways to interpret this. In the announcement of the project, I give a very specific kind of idea or vision that I have with respect to kind of biology and engineering. But I won't go through it because it's quite long, and but the main thing here, let me see. Yes, the main thing here, and I come to this part, is that the Game of Life is precisely in a gray line of a toy model and something that has had a lot of construction. So there are many complicated things built on it, and I'll show you in the next couple of slides what has actually been constructed within it. But it seems to me that this is kind of the fundamental part, and it is kind of in exploring how we constructed and how has nature constructed all the things that we have right now, that we will get the most insight. So interestingly enough, I'm not the first person to discover to realize this, and I will talk about who did it. But really, this was the missing piece of my project, and I think these four things kind of are the really the main combination of what I thought was the Galapagos Project at the beginning, so of April. Today I will add one more thing, but this was kind of the history of it. After that, I will claim is really kind of the process of how it's been evolving. But really, it was the combination of these four things, kind of the idea, the importance of technology within economics, how to analyze mathematics with the methods that came up from the physics project, and really to think all about to think fundamentally about computation, and to think about fundamentally about how things kind of evolve through time, kind of this synthetic view. And the main object of study is really the game of life and everything that has been constructed from it. So now I'm going to talk about the principal ingredients after like 2 months of figuring out the details and how it has been evolved after that. And yeah, so let me start with the principal ingredients. So the principal ingredients are three. First, I'm gonna briefly explain for the people that really don't know about the Game of Life. The second is really about the popularity of the Game of Life, and the three is really the combinatorial theory of evolution and kind of how to make sense of the data that comes from the Game of Life. So let's try to think about this. Okay, so Game of Life was created by John Conway in 1970s, and is basically a two-dimensional serial automation. What this means is basically a grid, a rectangular, not necessarily rectangular. It's a grid of cells, with each of one could be black and white, and given an initial condition like this here, we say, okay, given a rule for each cell, given a rule for each cell, and a number of neighbors, how it's going to be updated at the next time step. So in particular for the Game of Life, we have these 4 rules, which are giving this neighborhood, giving this cell, and these 8 neighbors here. These are the 4 rules, which are, the first one is kind of underpopulation, which is if the cell has less than 2 neighbors which are alive, that means black, then it will die in the next time step. If it has 2 or 3, it will survive. If it has 3 or more, it will die of overpopulation. If a cell is not alive but it has 3 neighbors which are alive, then it will be born out of reproduction. So what we see here is, for example, like some very simple rules, and we see how at each time step this evolves, this converts to this, and then like it dies, this converts to this, and then it repeats, this converts to this, and then it's stable, this converts to this, and then it goes nothing. There is really a lot of website online where you can program this. Really, it's really something that you can try on your own. The really big point here, and is that there is a huge popularity. There is something in this game that like has attracted kind of a lot of popularity of like young people, young coders, and they just have dedicated hours and hours and hours, uncountable hours into this game, and to kind of discover this new and never before seen world. And there are a lot of websites with a lot of different things going on. And there is even and there are old ones. There's new ones about new things, like generalizations of it, like to continuous space, to different type of grids, and people still are marveled about this. But I think it's not only that they are marveled. The important thing is that they've been able to build things. I think they've been able to build complicated things, Like for example, here we see a clock, or in here we see like a pi calculator. So for the last 50 years, 51 years really, they have developed kind of very complicated patterns and finely tuned, really. They're really finely tuned. If you just change a cell, they will it will just maybe it will nothing will change, or maybe like it will just explode. And really here comes the the other person that also realized this, which is of course Stephen Wolfram, who said the following. Actually, I read this comment in December 2020, but it really didn't ring any bell to me, because I didn't really have the framework on how to think about it. Then it was only in April, I think, when I kind of had this in my subconscious, and I realized, yes, this is it. And then I just came back again, and it was there in the New York Times. So what does it say? It said the following: I wondered for decades what one could learn from all that life hacking. I recently realized it's a great place to develop MetaEngineering, to see if there are general principles that govern the advance of engineering and help us predict the overall future trajectory of technology. One can look at microprocessors or airplanes, but they involve all sorts of details, physics and materials. In life, there is 50 years, this was written in 2020, of engineering development, just applied to configurations of bits. It's the purest example I know of dynamics of collective human innovation. So I took this comment literally, and I said, okay, how can we do this? And I realized that the best way to think about it was really the combinatorial theory of evolution, which was developed by Brian Arthur, but it's really kind of an obvious, I think, an obvious statement, just like Darwin was really, like, but he really kind of, and I think this is fundamental, and is that he really developed a very precise way on how to think about this. Because when we say technology, when we say ideas, we meant a lot of things, but this precision of language is really a fundamental piece of science, and I think economists really have done a great job in this. They have kind of created a lexicon of language that really kind of puts the head on the nail. Okay, so what is the combinatorial theory of evolution? It's really simple. It's really like the technology is assembled from pieces like that are available in kind of in a big bag that you can think of like a Lego set, and so you kind of take the pieces apart, combine them, and generate a new piece. And these pieces themselves are technologies. So the pieces themselves kind of are you take them and then you kind of combine them and you assemble them. And the third principle, which is kind of obvious too, is that they are useful for something. So each technology exploit an effect or phenomenon, usually several, to be useful for something, right? So for example, here we have a Lego set. We can think that a purple piece can kind of exploit this effect of CMM symmetry of crystallography, and the one which is kind of teal color, or what color of this kind of yellowish color kind of exploits another kind of phenomenon. So what are we going to do? So given kind of some elementary Game of Life patterns, then each pattern is a node in the graph, and we say, okay, so if we have a big piece which is made of two smaller pieces, then we just connect it. Then with this we can just create a larger and larger graphs with kind of elementary patterns with kind of let's say combined patterns and even bigger patterns. So we can generate this kind of phylogenetic tree. This has been done before but I've never seen it in the Game of Life. Actually, it's never been done in the Game of Life. So this is precisely the first task of this project, is to construct a database that precisely does this. There are a lot of databases about the Game of Life, but they mainly focus on kind of the catalog or the curation of big patterns, of interesting patterns that have some sort of symmetry or use, or they are just cool. There are other catalogs which look about the synthesis of patterns, and there are a lot of things around. This is, for example, a sample of the Silver Life Lexicon, which is about kind of different patterns, and but if you see, many of them are really made of sub-patterns. Really, the main thing here is that, given, for example, this pattern, this is technically called the two-engine courtship. So, is this pattern composed of sub-patterns? Is this even a well-posed question? Can we do this for any pattern? Can we just keep doing this for each sub-piece? Can we just take them as a bag of elementary patterns and put it in our database, and then the big pieces that which we call engineer, can we put them in the database too? Or is it maybe not the case, and we have to just put a big like elementary piece to the big big pattern, this two-engine courtship, and we put it in the elementary basket? For example, I've already done this for some patterns that are interesting for specific reasons. And basically, you can do this effectively with some. You can just subdivide them. Like I did this with the most famous pattern there is around, which is called the Gospel Rider gun. And with more difficult patterns you can build from it. The objective is to kind of classify this kind of very big thing, difficult thing, which is an 8-bit computer, which was created by Nicolas Luceau in 2000, I think, 13 or 16, I don't remember. But yes, so this is one of the big things. I would also like to classify many more things, but this is just one sample of it. This was this was really the original idea, actually. However, when I presented this idea in the seminar of the Wolfram Physics Project, I realized that it was not enough. I realized there were many flaws of it. And then I conceived the Gemini Expedition. And this really is all about two things. And it's about to exploit a very complicated device, perhaps one of the most complicated devices ever constructed in the Game of Life, but something that is also very popular. And I found this, which is the 0E0P meta cell, which is a self-replicating kind of pattern, and not only that, it's also an universal constructor. So it is pretty interesting, because really I think I was kind of ignoring a lot of things in my previous life. So in my previous project, sorry, I was thinking about this kind of new way to organize everything, but I also kind of was ignoring how people in the Game of Life really think about this. And they really think about this. It's like, I think maybe this was kind of an older way of thinking of constructing patterns in the Game of Life. Now the modern way is to do synthesis, and doing synthesis is kind of much more kind of a biological or chemical way to think about this. And although I do think that we do build these kind of devices using kind of a combinatorial engineering framework or combinatorial evolution framework, I think you cannot explain those devices with this framework. You have to use something more. And this is really why I think it's very important to add this, and also because this is really popular and perhaps will get more attention in the Game of Life community, and overall I think it's much more impressive. So why is it, what is really there in the Gemini Expedition? Okay, so one thing I forgot to mention is that it's really complicated. It has millions of pieces, but it's also the pattern of the year in the 2018 the contest in the Game of Life website. So it is really kind of very popular. Yeah. So it's really, I call it Gemini Expedition because it is really kind of, I'm going from my computer kind of in a digital way. I'm going to go to this kind of hidden places on the internet that have been kind of producing a lot of things, these kind of hidden environments, and I'll go there and explore what they have and what they've kind of developed, and to see if I can understand this kind of more in a scientific form. And why did I call it kind of the Gemini Expedition? Well, it's because Gemini is really kind of about kind of these two babies, and so it's about self-replicating structures in the digital world. And kind of I took also inspiration from Darwin and kind of to the Beagle expedition, and this is why it's the Gemini Expedition. Yeah, so okay, so this is really the kind of the core of the expedition. I'm planning to to do these kind of live streams. It's actually very it's I'm believe me, I am tired right now, so I'll see if I can make these live streams. This is my first live stream, but anyways, I'll start doing the live streams. I also have a Twitter account, which is Galapagos Project, at Galapagos Project 2. And yeah, and basically the time of this project is that I'm going to start looking at different things that have been created. I start with something which is called the demonoid, then self-constructing spaceships, then I'll think about universal constructors, then self-replicating patterns, and then finally I'll finish in the 0p metacell. Okay, so that's really the outline of the project. Now is really what I want to find, or what are really the core questions I want to answer with this. On really one core question, which I already suspect what the answer is, and is like, is the combinatorial evolution framework capable of describing all these devices? So as I mentioned, I think in the simple cases, yes, but for all these new patterns that require synthesis, I think you need something more. This is kind of something interesting too, and is there like Cambrian explosions where kind of a piece was discovered and suddenly a lot of things came about, and this is, I think, correct too. This is also correct, I believe, but it's really not the same as the biological case. Okay, so this is also an interesting kind of biological question. So what are the difference between the individuals found in the Game of Life and the other ones found in nature? I'll have to go through a lot of things to discuss this, but anyways, I wrote a little bit about this in my second post about technology and money. it is found in the linked in the announcement post. There is also what perhaps the mission that Wolfram first said, which is about what's about the future of technology or the future of science. What can we really tell from this? I think there are things that you can definitely tell, but there's really a lot of things that I don't know yet. And this is kind of also a very interesting question, which is, if the combinatorial level framework is not enough, is there something that we already have that it's enough? For example, is constructor theory or assembly theory able to describe these patterns? And I think I'm not sure if it is, but I think there are things to understand about kind of. I think there are things to really learn from, for example, chemistry, I believe, and about for example biology, about for example metabolism's views of this. And I think a metabolism view of this machine is much more useful than really a one made of parts of objects. Okay, so what I'm trying to deliver here would be a main scientific article, or maybe more, I don't know. It will be kind of an interactive website with this article, a database with that I told before, and there is also an interactive way to look at the database. Also, I'll just, after I finish this, I'll just go to the website and show you how what we have right now, and I'll also try to do some explanatory simple videos for economics and for technology, and the analysis of several self-replicating patterns or structures. It's really, I don't know really what's gonna be deliverable, but it's gonna be I'm thinking about it. So this is it. So let me now show you what is the website. So this is the website. This is okay, so it seems I cannot play it here, even though I actually said I could. But anyways, so here's the database. I already have like 34 things to do and like a lot of things that are ready. Let's start with the most complicated one. This is the NOT gate, and it has its composition here. Where did I found this? And it's really it's a like a website that is interactive, and you can actually play the pattern. And this is a NOT gate, and also here we have a NOT gate, but with a different input. Yes, that's it. So we also have the Gemini project, like a little bit about its description, the people, which so far it's only me. Hopefully I can recruit some people to help me, and you know, some things that are still not really, don't really have anything, but yep, this is basically it. And there is like a Twitter account, and you can follow us if you want. So this is it. It was 1 hour, so thank you very much.